pod volunteers. To understand how sleep takes over our body, sleep researcher Claire Anderson is explaining to them what she's looking for on the EEG readout.
We're looking at the brain activity produced by David whilst he's in the pod and the eye movements down at the bottom. And when he becomes sleepy, the eyes will roll, and then we can start looking towards brain activity channels, and we can try and work out when he actually falls asleep. What will happen is he will sort of go into sleep, probably come back out of it again, and then go back into sleep. And these are a series of microsleeps before going into a much longer sustained period of sleep.
It's a myth that we fall asleep gradually. We may feel drowsy, but the onset of sleep happens in an instant. And these microsleeps can last up to 10 or 15 seconds. If you do find yourself clattering along the bumps on the edge of the motorway and can't remember the last few moments, the chances are you've actually been sleeping.
I think probably the longest I've gone without sleep is about 4 nights or so.
When it got to 10 days, it was just, you know, it was very depressing.
Literally, on occasions, I go right through the night and just do not get sleep at all.
To see if you're sleep deprived, get ready to take the second part of the Epworth test. Question 5.
If you were to lie down to rest in the afternoon, what are the chances of you dozing off? Again, note down A for never, B, unlikely, C, possibly, D, very likely. Question 6. What are the chances of dozing when sitting and talking to someone? Is it A, B, C, or D? Remember, answer as truthfully as possible. Now to question 7. Rate your chances of dozing off when sitting quietly after a lunch, but without alcohol. If it's never, note down A. Unlikely, B. Possibly, C. Very likely, D. And finally, what are the chances of dozing off if you're in a car and stop temporarily in traffic? Again, note down A, B, C, or D, according to what you think the chances are.
So now you've completed all 8 questions, we can calculate your score. If you've been noting down your answers as you go along, you now need to do a bit of quick maths. Ignore all your A answers and then score yourself 1 point for every B, 2 for every C, and 3 points for every D. Add those scores together and you've got your Epworth rating. And in the meantime, I'll explain what those ratings mean. The test is often a good indicator of how well you're sleeping when you do go to bed. The lower the score, the better the quality of your sleep, and the more alert you should be during the day. A score of 9 or less means that you're well rested. If you score between 10 and 15, you're more likely to feel tired during the day. Not enough to put you in the danger zone, but it does suggest that you aren't as rested as you could be. However, a score of 16 to 24 is cause for concern. To score that high, you must be seriously sleepy during the day, and could be a risk if driving, using machinery, or doing a job that involves the safety of others. Still to come on how to sleep better, we find out why working the night shift can mess with our natural body clock. And why this woman is wearing a bra back to front for the sake of her husband.
I can't believe I'm doing this, I really can't.
So how much do you think is the right amount of sleep?
You hear the average being 8 hours.
8 to 10 hours? I think I would like 8 hours of sleep.
4 or 5.
7 to 8.
That's a good night's sleep.
Until now, there's never been a definitive figure on how much sleep we're getting as a nation. But tonight, we can reveal that the average duration for adult sleep in Britain is 7 hours and 2 minutes. Research into sleep really only kicked off in the 1950s and 1960s, but our survey suggests we're surviving on less sleep than ever before. But is that necessarily a problem?
Well, it's commonly thought we're all sleep deprived now, and it might be a case, but I don't think it's any worse than it ever was.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about where did this idea of 8 hours come from, because all over the country people seem to have this in their heads.
And certainly people with sleep disorders will often be confused as to why they seem to be having 10 hours of sleep and yet they still feel lousy and very sleepy during the day.
But we can't just say you need 7 hours sleep or 8 hours sleep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's 7 hours of uninterrupted quality sleep is really what most of us require.
Yeah.
So what's important is not just the quantity of your sleep, but the quality of your sleep time.
At what time of the day do you feel at your best?
Between 5 and 9.
To understand how to get the best quality sleep, we need to be aware of our individual sleep cycles.
You're entirely free to plan your day. At what time would you go to bed?
Right now, these volunteers are working out what's known as their circadian rhythm, to find out when they're naturally at their most alert or drowsy.
So in this point here, you're feeling quite tired. Does your alertness go down?
Oh, I'm fast asleep at that time. Yeah, because I go to bed early.
Okay.
Typically, we have 2 low periods a day. One overnight, when we normally go to bed, and another early to mid-afternoon, approximately 6 hours after we get up. Like all living creatures, this cycle is regulated by an internal body clock that also influences alertness and body temperature. And either by luck or design, this tends to follow a 24-hour period. However, the human body isn't always spot on, and we take many of our cues from when the sun is in the sky. Take those cues away, and the body gets confused. But the question is, can we really buck our natural rhythm? By his own admission, Les Johnson is struggling on some of the tests, especially the memory recall. And he puts it down to a recent career move that means he's now working through the night. Les has spent a life on the road, first as a driving instructor and then 12 years as an international coach driver. He recently traded in his long-distance lifestyle for a milk round in Cornwall. But he never anticipated how these early morning shifts would affect his life.